Hello, everyone. Welcome into another edition of Ville on the Ville. A lot to talk about today. I'm going to try to cram it all in a fairly compact episode. So I'm going to get started right away and just kind of going back over some stuff I've talked about earlier in the week and some quick takes. Have more time today to elaborate on it. And of course, the first being the two biggest events of the week so far. Tyra having the interim tag removed and placed as athletic director, and Chris Mack, of course, being hired officially on Wednesday afternoon. In terms of my opinion, I gave those in my quick takes. And really with Tyra, I don't think there's a lot more to elaborate on. I think that decision was a good one. And the reasons why I think are simple. He showed an ability from the time he took over as an interim athletic director last fall, really through the basketball season, making decisions pertaining to certain coaching positions and other areas of the athletic department that were not easy decisions, but if you look at the situation Louisville's looking at fiscally, money management, operations management, I think he showed that he can make those tough decisions and do the things he feels are necessary to get Louisville's athletic program back on the right footing moving forward. And then, of course, this week, after getting that interim tag removed, he makes what I think most people consider to be as good of a hire as he possibly could have made for the Louisville basketball program in getting Chris Mack. So I think Tyra, he has those business qualities that you need. He's already shown an ability to make sound decisions, to make tough decisions, and an ability to find good candidates when a big hire has to be made. Now, ultimately, we've got to find out how the future how it will play out for him as athletic director. But I think the track record in the brief time he's been in that role has shown that he has the potential to do very well. And I think those business qualities, as I mentioned in the quick take, as important as if not more important than that sports management background that, some people look at this role as an athletic director and feel like, well, if you haven't managed sports before, then how are you going to do it this role at this level in a way that we're used to seeing with Tom Jurich? But I think the situation Louisville is in now, those business qualities Tyra possesses, and he's managed people, don't get me wrong, and he's been around sports. So I think he definitely has the background and the knowledge and the experience to lead Louisville forward as athletic director. So I think that was a great decision. And as I just mentioned, hiring Chris Mack seemingly has done a very good job in his first major hire as Louisville's athletic director. As far as Chris Mack goes, as I mentioned in my quick take the other day, he hit a grand slam, a home run, or whatever you want to call it, the biggest shot you could take or you could hit. He did it in the press conference, and it was a fantastic job of really touching on everything he needed to touch on and to really unify a fan base, an alumni group of athletes who really needed somebody to draw them together, because this fan base and really some of the athletes as well, whether you're talking about the past couple years or even in some cases, once Rick Pitino came in, you got a sense from some of those former players that there was a little fragmentation there between the Crum era and the Pitino era, and the inclusiveness was not there. And I think Chris Mack came in and spoke to all those arms that he needed to reach out and try to bring everybody together, and to do that right away really shows that not only he cares, but he has an understanding of the things he needs to do as the basketball coach at the University of Louisville. So it was a great mix of respecting the past, naming names, whether it was players or coaches or areas of the community, touching on emotion, pleading to fans that we're going to need you to get in the Center, get it packed in, talk to students, getting down and saying, hey, if I need to come out and wrestle you up and get you downtown to the Center, help you do that, showing that he understood some of the challenges the students face. Let's face it, the student section had taken a lot of grief here recently, some of that from me for their performances as a student section, and some of their complaints has been, hey, man, we got to get all the way down there from campus, which I guess that could be a challenge. And he right away, bang, hits on that. He says, if that's a challenge, we need to figure that out. If I need to help in some way, I'll do that. So again, he really did a great job of reaching out and really showing that he understood on so many levels all the different things that Louisville faces as a program moving forward. Spoke to the fans, talked about the quote he had. I don't know if he looked that one up or what, but the darkest clouds elicit the brightest lightning bolts. That was fantastic. It was a great, vision for everybody to see that, great things are ahead. Really invigorate the former players and the fans and bring them together. So it was a fantastic press conference. I'm not going to go into great detail. I really liked it when he talked about his family and his wife, and talked about how she bled Cardinal red. I mean, part of me, I know the way that the Louisville community kind of segments and skews in certain areas of the county. When you get into that Shively area, that kind of skews a little more Kentucky. Not more Kentucky overall, but just a higher percentage than most in the county. And I wondered, I assumed she was a Louisville fan because you heard she was from Louisville and, marry Chris Mack. But I didn't know. So then when he said that in the press conference, so she bleeds Cardinal red, and then he got emotional thinking about it. So he knew, that it was special to her. Now, he pointed out that it wasn't the reason they took the job, and I'm sure it didn't hurt. And it's just neat to see, that's something that maybe as soon as she knew she was marrying a head coach, that maybe one day this would happen, and now it is. So that's pretty neat. And you've already seen her on social media with the kids, the picture that her daughter drew, the Cardinal bird. I don't know if you've seen that. If not, I think I retweeted it. That was a fantastic drawing, first of all, but just really neat. You can see, the picture where they're throwing the rails up. Great form, by the way. That they hopefully really are excited about it, just as the fans are excited with Chris Mack coming in. But really just as good a first impression as you could possibly make. Couldn't be more impressed. And now the first few days of a new coaching, I imagine that's the fun time. You're energized, you're excited. But now, the rubber hits the road, so to speak. Let's see what he does as far as putting a staff together and moving forward. And, of course, a staff, support staff, assistants, players. The talk is that Luke Murray, as well as Mike Peags or Pegas, I still haven't gotten it. It looks like Peags, so that's how I'll pronounce it for now until I hear him say it, are definitely coming. His main assistant, Travis Steele, in line to get the head coaching job at at Xavier, force of habit. So I guess he's kind of staying hands off with Steele because he doesn't want to interfere with the potential of him getting the Xavier job. So if he doesn't, then, does he then say, hey, come on down here to Louisville? We'll have to wait and see. And I'm sure he's going to wait and see what Xavier decides, where to put their basketball program, whose hands to put it in. But I would assume if Steele doesn't get that position, perhaps there's another opening somewhere. But if not, that he would come down here and join Chris Mack once again on his staff at Louisville. Now, talking about Luke Murray, obviously that's the son of Bill Murray, and fans immediately got excited as soon as Chris Mack. It was pretty much, you knew he was going to be the coach. Oh, are we going to get Luke Murray? Are we going to have superfan Bill Murray down here in Louisville? That certainly would be cool, and we'll see what the future holds as far as that goes. But I don't know if many people probably saw the tweet I put out, the video of Bill Murray coming out in stripes, which was shot in Louisville. It was neat thinking about. I went back and looked at that scene, and coming across the bridge at the beginning. Of course, they're going to the airport and going to Indiana, which doesn't make sense, but that's the movies. And you see the skyline of Louisville in 1980, and I'll play that clip here in a little bit if you haven't seen it. And how much the skyline has changed in that clip is neat because not only, are they on the 2nd Street Bridge and you overlook Louisville, but it's Bill Murray gets out and he stands on the bridge and looks right out towards the city, right where the Yum Center is going to be. So I made a little video, and you may have seen it. It got pretty popular on the internet. And I was able to take a clip or a picture of the way downtown almost currently looks. The best picture I could find. I wanted to get my own picture, but I couldn't get on the bridge because it's closed for painting. So you can't even walk up on it. I wanted to get a current picture because the Omni Hotel is now on the skyline. So in the picture, the edit I did, it's not there, but I can't get on the bridge. I don't have a drone either. So couldn't get a current shot, but it's pretty close. You see the Yum Center, and that was the point I was trying to make and kind of moving forward. So again, I'll play that here in a little bit if you haven't seen it, but chances are you have if you're on Twitter because it got around pretty good. Some people, most people retweeted it. You had a couple people, one in particular in local radio, who felt the need to yak the video and then tweeted himself. And I'm not going to go into that. It's obvious the reasons he did it. Helps him get some media mentions and things and impressions and maybe his job. He gets credit for that, but whatever. Anyway, I kind of expressed that aggravation on Twitter as well. But we'll see moving forward. Now you move on to players. I think the first thing he wanted to do, Chris Mack, is make sure that he spoke to the current players because those are the ones you had to recruit first. And it sounds like he did a fantastic job. I don't think you've heard anybody as far as the guys eligible to come back or that you don't assume might have a chance to go pro. All the freshmen, Ryan McMahon, they seem like they're going to be back, and that's a very good start. I mean, that's the first thing. David Padgett started to, allude to that towards the last few games, and even as he was announced he was not going to return, that you have to do these players right and make sure they're taken care of, and Chris Mack seems like he's really done that first, and I think that was a good first step. Now we wait and see, will Deng Adel and Ray Spalding come back? That's totally up in the air right now. You just never know what these guys might decide. Ray Spalding's stock has absolutely skyrocketed this season, in particular the last few months, when that effort and consistency that I spoke of and many have spoken of really just was there and finally stayed consistent. And his output and the points per game, the rebounds per game, you just didn't see that drop off. You saw flashes of it his first 2 years, but you didn't see the consistency. And then he started bringing that consistency the second half of this season, his junior campaign. And his stock has risen quickly. And so now he's probably going to go and see what kind of feedback he gets. And I think the needle is leaning towards him not returning. But if he did, that would be a huge boost to this program. So we'll have to wait and see. I really would hope he would come back. But again, the best thing for him needs to be what he feels is best. So we'll see. Deng Adel, I think that's a little bit bigger question mark. Even though he tested the waters last year, I think it's a catch-22 with him personally. He's probably thinking, look, Donovan Mitchell, me and him were kind of on the same level seemingly last year, and he went into the NBA and had so much success when really nobody saw that coming. So that might entice him to just go ahead and try it, regardless of what he truly feels. However, when you really break their games down, when you see what Donovan Mitchell's doing in the pros, you see an ability to beat guys off the dribble, to really make moves one-on-one, get into traffic, make plays and create. And let's face it, Deng Adel has not shown an ability to do that on a consistent basis. Just doesn't have that quality handle that Donovan Mitchell has shown at the NBA level. Deng Adel hasn't shown that in college, so I think that's the big handcuff he's facing right now and making a decision to jump to the pros. So we'll see. Again, I think that's going to come down to, now I'm not real sure on whether he can even do this whole process again since he did it last year. Can you do it repeatedly or can you only do it once? I don't know. So, whether he can technically test the waters or not, or just has to basically talk to people, we will see. But Deng Adel and Ray Spalding will be the next series, if you will, of current players that you want to try and recruit back. But they need to do what they think is best, and I'm perfectly fine with what they decide. It is their future, and it's their decision that should be made. As far as players and recruits that are in high school currently, you've heard a lot of offers going out. Most of them have been to players in the 2019 class. And again, as I've spoken before, and I'll say it again, I'm not a big recruiting guy, so I'm not going to go into names and specifics because there are plenty of people out there who do that very well, and they can give you that detailed information. Now, the one name that's the biggest is Romeo Langford of New Albany, and I've heard mixed things, to be honest. The first thing you heard was, that's why he's waiting to make that announcement. He wants to see what's going to happen with the Louisville hire. But as soon as it became pretty apparent that Chris Mack was going to be the coach, I think it was Jeff Greer, the Courier-Journal, reached out and said, Romeo Langford stated that it's not going to make a difference. Louisville's not in the picture for him. It's still those same three schools, Kansas, Vanderbilt, and Indiana. And he had supposedly set up a final visit to go to Indiana to give them the last word. Now, by that last word, I don't know if that meant a last word just from Indiana, one last time, or a last word from everybody that he's considering. I was a little confused on the specificity of what that last word meant. If it was just, I want to give Indiana one last time, one last visit, or that's my last visit with anybody. So I wasn't quite sure on what that was referring to. But just today, of course, you hear things all over the community. I was out getting a fresh haircut, and a guy there who's a huge Louisville fan said, I just talked to somebody today who said, it's pretty much a done deal. Romeo Langford's going to come to Louisville. That Chris Mack sealed it up. And I was, I kind of said, I haven't really heard that. That's interesting. But you really don't know. Okay, that's my take on recruiting. You just don't know until the decision is made by the kid, by the player, where they're going to go. That's why I don't put a lot of stock into it. I appreciate and respect the guys who put a lot of time and effort because it is a hell of a lot of work. But again, it's just so up in the air. It seems like half the time, if not more, that decision comes down to the last second, and you just don't even know what it's going to be, even if you've put in a ton of time and a ton of work. So we will wait to see the Romeo Langford decision. Still, I think a lot of Louisville fans interested and hopeful, but I would urge you to not think he's going to show up at Louisville. I have a feeling that if he was, you'd probably start to hear a little more rumblings when Chris Mack was hired, or even some suggestions coming from the Romeo Langford camp that might be a possibility, and you simply have not heard that. In fact, you've heard just the opposite. So we will see. Obviously, for next year, especially if Ray and Deng don't come back, you've got some big holes to fill. Lost Honest and Quentin as well. So we'll see. That base of players coming back is a good start. Malik Williams, Dwayne Sutton. I think you've got a sound group to build around, but the depth really won't be there if you don't try to reach out to some players, 2 or 3 players in this class, or some grad transfers, of course, that are popping up all over the landscape now. So we will see how creative Chris Mack can get here in these next couple months. I think April 11th, if I remember correctly, is the signing day. So not a lot of time here over the next couple weeks to maybe wrap up some signings. But it's always interesting, and you just never know as far as that goes with recruiting. The women tonight, a huge matchup with a huge team and a huge opponent, Mississippi State. As amazing a team when you consider what they bring to the table. Outstanding guard play, as well as the most imposing post player in women's college basketball in Tyra McCown's 6'7", a big body who can really dominate a game just simply by being there. Jeff Walsh talked about it in the press conference that, she just goes over you and rebounds the ball, and she's not fouling you. She's just so much bigger and stronger. She just takes the ball, and there's nothing you can do about it. And if you see video of her in a game with a normal team as an opponent, it looks like I likened it to at a high school or going back and working a camp at an elementary school. All these little kids running around, and they just got the ball up above them, just kind of messing around with them. That's almost what it looks like, because typically, of course, you had Brittany Griner, who was very tall as well, even taller than McCown's. But McCown's has a physical size that even Brittany Griner did not have. So even though she's not as tall as Griner, she is much bigger and just really can just, I don't want to say throw her weight around, but just get in a spot and dominate. So that's a quandary that Louisville's going to be in when you have that post presence both on offense and defense. She can just clog up the lane and make it very difficult to get anything in the paint. And on the offensive end, she gets position, it's over. Or if off a missed shot, she just reaches up and grabs it and drops it in. Very difficult. So I'm really excited to see what Jeff Walls, what he tries to do to get the edge on Mississippi State. And when you really start to try and look at what Louisville might be able to do, you break down the minutes played by Mississippi State players, the production they get out of their starters compared to the bench. I don't want to say they don't have a bench, but they don't play a lot of bench minutes. They have a few players that average double-figure minutes, but just on the low end of that, they get about almost 148 minutes out of the 200, so nearly 75% of their minutes per game from their 5 starters, and those 5 starters produce about 82% of their points. So you understand there that they rely on that starting 5 quite a bit in terms of what they get in a game. And here's the whole stats rundown. It took me a while to actually find this. I had to go to Mississippi State's website. This is courtesy of their sports website at MSU. But if you look at first of all, their shooting is unbelievably good. And when you have great guard play and a center like McCown's who can just dominate a game, you understand how the shooting percentage could be so good. The top line here is their shooting percentage, and you can see their field goal percentage, over 47% from the field, 3-point percentage, nearly 40%. And then you look at their opponent, under 40% from the field. On the bottom line there, under 30% from 3-point range. And, of course, they're dominating their opponents, outscoring them by over 25 points a game, nearly 26 points a game. So they make it very difficult from the inside, from the outside. So how can you force them to not shoot the ball as well? You've got to play great defense, but something else that I think Jeff is going to try and do is force the pace to try and maybe wear them down. Like I said, they don't have a lot of bench productivity. Excuse me here, let me get the right full screen. They don't have a lot of bench productivity, and you see it here. Here are the minutes. You got Victoria Vivians, outstanding point guard, right up there with Asia Dur as far as what she brings to the table, the ability to shoot the ball, to drive the ball. But you look at the minutes there. You got 3 of them that are pretty much 30 plus, and then Morgan Williams with 25. So that's that, 75% of the minutes come from right there. And outside of that, their bench production as far as minutes isn't a whole lot. The next three are just about 13, 15, 16 minutes per game, and they don't produce a lot of points. So what I think Jeff is going to do, I think he's going to try and get them moving up and down. Tyra McCown's used to getting up and down the court a full 40 minutes. We will see. But I think that's probably the best shot you're going to have. Try to wear them down. Early on, it may not seem to be working, but this is kind of goes along the lines of what Rick Pitino a lot of times like to do. Get them going, moving quick. Early on, you may not see what you want, but as the game wears on, as you get into the late third quarter, early fourth quarter, maybe it starts to show up. Fatigued legs, shots aren't falling. The big presence in the middle isn't getting up and down the court as effectively, and you're able to get to the basket, maybe in transition, or get in there before she's able to set herself up in the half-court defense. So we'll see. I mean, I think that's probably the best approach to take, because Louisville does have a little more depth, get a little more production out of their bench. Jeff Walz against Oregon State, the way that game started, they didn't get out to a big lead early, but I even said it. I liked what I saw in terms of the pace of the game. You could see that, it was at a pace that Oregon State didn't seem to really like, and that wore on them as the game went on. I think even though Mississippi State does like to pressure you defensively, and I think they're going to do that, that might even come, as the game wears on, that might help Louisville, because I think Jeff Walz is going to say, let's do this. Let's try to get the pace going up and down, see if we can wear out the Bulldogs and kind of catch them at the end there and see how that goes. But it's not going to be easy. If Mississippi State can do the things they want to do and they shoot the ball well, it's going to be darn near impossible when you talk about how they can shoot it and what Tyra McCown's can bring in the post. So a very intriguing matchup, and Jeff Walz is one of the best in the business when it comes to coming up with a game plan, implementing a game plan. And so this game here, not only this game, but if they could somehow win it, the next game also going to be a real test and a real show of what he can do as a head coach. And that will be tonight at 7 o'clock, ESPN, so tune into that and see if the the women's basketball team, still in the habit of doing that, can get to that third national championship appearance. They've never lost in the semifinals, so let's see if, as a program and as a coach, Walz and Louisville can get to the national championship game. Want to touch on a couple other things. The baseball team, in a bit of what you'd call a slump, they dropped another series opener. That's the third straight game they've lost to open a series. They drop it to Florida State. Started off really well. Got up 2-0 in the first inning. Florida State answered with a run in the bottom of the first, but then the Cards hit a homer in the top of the second. Got up 3-1. But then after that, it was all Florida State. Scored the next, I believe, 8 runs of the game. Got up 9-3. Louisville got a late run, but it was not nearly enough, and they fell 9-4. So now they're against the wall in terms of needing to win 2 straight down in Tallahassee to prevent from losing their third consecutive series in ACC play. They got the opener against North Carolina, but then they dropped one at Wake. They dropped one to Clemson last week, and now their backs against the wall down in Tallahassee. I think we all anticipated this season was going to be a drop-off, but the start was very encouraging, 14-0, the last undefeated team in college baseball. But since that start, they've really kind of tailed off, and I think we're starting to see now what we expected this season might entail, just not the depth that they've had, both at the bats and on the mound. And there's a lot of learning to do. You saw mistakes in the field yesterday, even from some of the more experienced guys. Early on, Josh Storrs from center field threw a ball to third base when he had no chance to get the runner. That allowed the guy who had got the hit to come around from first to second when that should have gone to second and would have kept him over at first. So little things like that. I think they're making some mental mistakes early, and as a team, maybe the veteran guys are pressing, maybe the younger guys are learning. And I think this is just a season you're going to see if you can build up towards a strong finish. And I think Dan McDonnell, if anybody can do it, he's the kind of coach that can allow these guys to learn, build their way up. And as you get towards the end of the season, let's see how this team's doing when we get towards the end of April and into May, closing in on the postseason, if they've been able to kind of gather themselves up and finish strong in conference. But I don't think we should expect to see what we've seen over the past couple years from Louisville baseball. But maybe we can see a strong finish. And I think that's kind of what I'm looking forward to and seeing how they can do that. But plenty of season left, and it is baseball. You go through ups and downs, and Dan McDonnell certainly, if anybody understands that, it's him. And see if maybe they can come back today and tomorrow and get a couple wins in Tallahassee and kind of jumpstart things. So we will see as far as that goes. The other thing, spring practice continues. Pro Day was held yesterday. Not a lot coming out of that. I think the biggest takeaway from Pro Day was that Lamar Jackson did not run the 40. I think he's basically trying to say, look, I'm a quarterback, okay? If you want to know how fast I'm going to run, then you probably don't care about my quarterbacking skills, and so I'm not going to worry about that right now, because I want you to understand that if you're going to be interested in me, it's going to be as a quarterback first and not some other kind of quasi position that you want to come up with to highlight my skills. He himself said, look, there's plenty of tape showing what I can do on a football field in terms of running and getting away from people. So you've got plenty of that. You don't need me. I'm not going to run a 40 to show off my speed for you, because you know it's there. The game speed is there. So let's critique me as a quarterback. And if you're going to draft me, that's what you need to draft me as. Tom Brady did not need to run a 40 to be a good quarterback. So, I get it. He's a great athlete, but I also it's very frustrating to see the double standard of certain quarterbacks who aren't knocked for deficiencies, and other quarterbacks who are knocked for the same, what you'd call deficiency, the deficiency mainly being completion percentage for Lamar Jackson. When Lamar Jackson a lot of times had a difficult time with an offensive line that had issues, as well as a lot more drops than most of the top quarterbacks. I think his drop percentage was almost twice as much as the next closest. And you talk about those quarterbacks that he's being talked about in this draft class. So that was probably the biggest takeaway. Jair Alexander representing himself still very well. Reggie Bonifant, I think, had some good numbers, ran like a 4.40, showed that speed. So hopefully, with just the overall physical talent he possesses, still has an outstanding vertical jump, he can find a spot somewhere to contribute on an NFL roster. I certainly think he helped himself at Pro Day as well. But spring practice continues. Last week I shared that website, Louisville Football Life, where you can go and get those updates. But outside of that, there's not a lot you can provide. So that's the place to go to get that. And, of course, on the spring game on April 14th will be coming up for everybody to see there. So I did mention that video clip earlier, the Bill Murray clip. And if you haven't seen it, I'll go ahead and play that now before we wrap things up. And as I noted, the movie Stripes was filmed in Louisville in the early 80s. I believe it was filmed in 1980. It may have been released in 81. But it obviously starred Bill Murray, and now Bill Murray's son, Luke Murray, is going to be coaching here at the University of Louisville. And so I was looking at that clip, went back and watched it, when we knew Chris Mack was coming in and hopefully Luke Murray. And the scene was, as I mentioned earlier, on the 2nd Street Bridge. Bill Murray was driving across to the airport, oddly enough, and then you see the skyline of Louisville and how different it looked back in the early 80s. I don't remember what it looked like then because I was only about 6 or 7 years old, but what it looked like then and what it looked like now are totally different. But the neat part of this is he's looking at the Yum Center, or where the Yum Center is eventually going to be, and so I made a little edit here. If you haven't seen it, here it is, and after this, we'll come back and wrap up this episode.
Hey, you can't stop in the middle. We're going to get rid of it.
All right, there it is. So if you hadn't seen it, there it was, a clip I whipped up. I love doing stuff like that. You probably see my highlight videos if you've been to my Ville on the Ville Now YouTube channel. So I appreciate everybody who's checked those out and enjoys them. And I did want to kind of have an announcement here. I got some news this week that was very encouraging for the future of Ville on the Ville and its opportunity to become a little bit bigger. I did receive word that towards the start of next season, as we get into maybe August, as football and the next whole sports season starts up, that Ville on the Ville is likely going to have an opportunity to grow into a bigger platform. That's very exciting. And that's what I've said from the time I started this. Some of you might have been like, what's this guy doing? I don't really get it. You're just talking on this YouTube channel or sending these videos out. There was always a purpose behind it that I said I couldn't share. So again, I can't share all the specifics yet, but did receive news this week, very encouraging news that Ville on the Ville could possibly be growing, very likely will be growing as we move into the 2018-2019 athletic season for Louisville sports. As soon as I get more specifics on that, The first people to know will be the people here who follow me on Twitter and on the YouTube channel. But I wanted to share that latest news that I just actually received today, so I'm pretty excited about it. And moving forward, as I've said from the beginning, the vision I have for this is something completely different. I know that's kind of interesting to say in this day and age. There's so many different ways that people are doing sports coverage, but this is truly, when I can finally share what this is going to be, you'll understand how it is unique, both in the way it's covered and where it is being covered from. And that's just very exciting for me to share with you. And as soon as I can get more specific about it, I certainly will. Going to wrap the episode up today. Go Women's Cardinals basketball. Let's get that win over Mississippi State. Now, again, I might drop a quick take over the weekend if they get the win and are playing for a championship, but it's possible, definitely will be the case. My next full episode will not be until after, hopefully, Jeff Walls and the Women's Cardinal basketball team have won a national championship. And what a way to finish this season. What a way to get just some positive momentum going if we can, hire a new AD, hire a new men's basketball coach, and capture the first women's national championship in Louisville history. That will be a monumental way to really start a new era in Cardinal sports, and so that would just be fantastic. So hopefully we can share that next week and put on some Cardinal red and cheer a new banner going up in the KFC Center. Until next time, this has been Ville on the Ville. As always, go Cards.